I gotta give them the monkey of the day. They're just grabbing their shit, not caring where they throw it. You walking by, you get hit with the shit that these monkeys are throwing. What's up, Solutionaries? Maj Toure here, founder of Black Guns Matter. Just saw a clip of Charlemagne today giving the Tennessee legislature the donkey of the day. Donkey of the day for passing legislation that allows teachers that are licensed to carry, that take mental health evaluations to carry their firearms to protect the children. So this one's gonna be a longer video. We'll let it play for a little bit while I'll stop every so often to give my breakdown, but it was a lot of stupid shit and incorrect things. So let's play it, Solutionaries, and I'll give you the breakdown throughout.
Who have passed a bill that allows teachers to carry guns in school. Let's go to NBC News for the report, please.
Chaos erupting in Tennessee's state capitol, where lawmakers just passed a bill that would allow teachers to carry concealed handguns in schools. Emotions were high as protesters descended on the House gallery, waving signs as House representatives voted 68 to 28 to pass the bill following the state Senate's lead.
We are being blamed for putting guns in schools, but the purpose of it is to protect our children.
The teachers would be required to have a permit, do training, and get a background check and mental health evaluation.
All of the things anti-gunners say they want.
It's just one of those gun-free zones where people know they can go there and take advantage of folks.
We have had this discussion here on the Breakfast Club before, and I understand maybe why a teacher would want to carry a gun in the school. I mean, if you have a license to carry a gun or pistol, if you know how to properly use your gun or pistol, if you have, you know, your gun or pistol in a secure place, just like you do at home, I don't have an issue per se with you being able to carry your gun anywhere. The reason I'm giving these lawmakers in Tennessee donkey of the day is because this bill was passed a year after a shooter opened fire and killed 6 people at a Nashville school. You mean to tell me, instead of coming up with a comprehensive plan to reduce gun violence, out of all the things you could have done to attempt to curb gun violence, this is the best y'all could come up with? Out of all the collective perspectives that could have come from this group of legislators, the best y'all could come up with in response to a mass shooting is let the teachers carry guns. See, the reason I believe a teacher should be able to carry a gun is because I don't know no better. I'm not a legislator, and because I'm not a legislator, the only thing I can think of is self-preservation. If nobody can come up with any great ideas to protect me, then I'm going to resort to what I know to protect me, and that's prayer and my pistol, God and a Glock. But once again, I'm a country boy raised on a dirt road in Mount Corner, South Carolina. I am not a legislator. Legislators in a developed country like America. By the way, no other developed country has as much gun violence as America, but in a developed country like America, there has to be a better way. And there is, but America does not know how to solve problems.
Charlemagne just said a whole bunch of stupid shit. First of all, he's trying to abdicate his responsibility in it. As he said before, he's a gun owner. He said when I did Van Lathan's show years ago when Van was on TMZ, oh, I love the Black Guns Matter guy when he was on your show. It's an election season because they've been kind of giving the right some sort of love. They've had Candace Owens on, other Bill Burr, which would identify more on the right. So now they're going back this way. They're getting back to the bread and butter of anti-gun talking points, and he knows better. Saying, oh, I'm just not that smart. One, why are you in a position of leadership and talking like you're smart if you're actually not? And if you're not, then that means you're not qualified to have the conversation about firearms. So giving somebody the donkey of the day, not knowing any of the data as it relates to firearms ownership and what actually is better, safer, more responsible, and comprehensive solutions, you should be quiet. For the people that may not know, 60% of the deaths associated with firearms are suicides. 60% are suicides. That means out of the 30,000 deaths annually, more than half, less than 15,000, most people are killing themselves with firearms. And all death is bad. But when you say these things in an area where there's 300 million firearms that we know of, maybe even more, and then less than 14,000 are associated with firearms related deaths that are not suicides, and then you say we got to come up with a comprehensive plan, you got to pay attention to people like this in the media, most effective devil in America, that say things like comprehensive, common sense gun reform, assault weapons. These people don't know what they're talking about, and he knows better, but he's saying the exact opposite. Let's play a little bit more.
Lawmakers should be passing gun laws that actually reduce gun violence. How about background checks for all private sales and restrictions on multiple purchases? How about gun violence restraining orders? Yes, gun violence restraining orders. These allow family members of law enforcement to petition the court to temporarily bar an at-risk person from buying firearms.
So he's talking about extreme risk protection orders, which are in red flag laws, which violate the 4th Amendment of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. All right. We don't get freedom and safety. You get freedom and you become more safe by being more responsible and paying attention. So he's saying, why don't we have background laws? There are background laws. Anytime you go into a gun store and purchase a firearm, you're going to fill out a 4473, which is a federal form. You're going to get a federal background check. So him throwing that thing out there as if he's not a gun owner and doesn't know that every time you go to purchase a firearm from a gun store, you're going to get that background check. He knows that, but he's presenting it as if that's not already the case. As far as the red flag laws, he personally has been accused of a bunch of things that he contends that he never did. So in a red flag situation, extreme risk protection situation, somebody could say, you're the bad person. And then they tell somebody he's got guns. And then they, without due process, come into your home to try to take you or your firearms. That type of legislation actually puts citizens as well as law enforcement officers at risk unnecessarily. We have due process for a reason. Let's take a little bit more listen.
Police may also be permitted to confiscate their guns. One of the things I found interesting, was this thing called investing in smart gun technology. President Obama said in 2013, if we can set it up so you can't unlock your phone unless you got the right fingerprint, you should be able to do the same with a gun. And by the way, all this safety technology is available. Entrepreneurs have introduced products that use biometrics to identify a weapon's rightful owner while locking it for everyone else. And I read that once these smart guns, if they have these smart guns, they may not prevent mass shootings with firearms purchased legally, but they can prevent crimes or suicides with weapons owned by somebody else.
Now, he's talking about biometrics. I actually agree with people that you have firearms, you should be locking those firearms up. Whether that's in a gun safe, whether that's a lock and key, or biometrics. Vault Tech, I'm not paid by them. Vault Tech has biometric safes where you put your fingerprints on it, the lock opens, and you get access to your firearms. A lot of these instructors will have biometric safes in their classrooms. There's an organization called Faster Saves Lives that has been doing this work in Ohio for years, instructing teachers that want to carry their firearms. They get the training, and they have biometric safes as well. He doesn't know what he's talking about as it relates to, the technology isn't there as it relates to biometrics on triggers. That's some Judge Dredd from the 90s type of stuff. It's cartoonish. It doesn't really work well. And that's why it hasn't been a massive transformation over to that. Outside of that, that would be an electronic thing. So you're talking about phones and all of that. How many times has everybody in here had to take their phone to the Apple Genius bar or something like that, okay? So it's a technological thing with a computer thing as opposed to mechanical that you're going to be potentially, hopefully never, utilizing to defend life. And that's not something that we should be leaving up to chance or if it gets wet or something like that. So that technology just isn't there, but it is there for biometric safes. So he's advocating for confiscating firearms. He's advocating for fingerprints on guns technology that isn't there. I do agree with safes, but again, the other legislatures around the country that have made it where teachers can carry firearms, they also do the biometric safe thing too. That exists.
You hear stories about a kid stealing their parents' gun or stealing somebody's gun and going to commit these mass shootings. They don't even fund gun violence research like they should. In fact, they have tried to eliminate the funding for gun violence research. And you know why? Because in 1996, Congress, with a push from the NRA, and we'll get to that, passed the Dickey Amendment named after its author, former Republican Representative J. Dickey from Arkansas, which mandated that no CDC funds could be spent on research that may be used to advocate or promote gun control. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why we really can't get any proper gun legislation anywhere in this country.
So that's not true either. He's saying it as if the Dickey situation in Arkansas was because they just didn't want it. The supreme law of the land is the Second Amendment. As it relates to firearms, all of the other over 20,000 unconstitutional statutes are subservient and not, and if they're not in alignment with the supreme law of the land, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If it's not that, then you can't use government funds, CDC using government funds, taxpayer dollars, to fund studies that are trying to attack, because it wasn't just, we're just researching. The data's there. 60% of the deaths are suicides. That's not complicated. You don't need to launder billions of dollars to recognize that. He's trying to package it as if gun owners just didn't want to be safe, and that's just not true. What happened was when anti-gun lobbyists like Moms Demand Action, Bloomberg, those type of organizations, they would put into funds and change words around to make it seem as if, like most of you don't know that 30,000 of those deaths are suicides. They try to package that to make it look like it was a higher number than it was. So during that time, they said, no, we're going to take this back. You cannot use tax dollars for CDC to fund these situations, especially if they're not going to be telling the truth. If you want to look into more information like that, Crime Prevention Research Data by Dr. John Lott, they do a lot of studies, up to middle studies. He wrote a book called More Guns, Less Crime. Everybody should check into that. So that part of what he's talking about there is also incorrect. He's reading this off of a screen. It's not something that he's actually fully familiar with. So he's reading something, he's pandering, he's kind of saying like, oh, they don't care. And anybody that's ever met a gun owner, a safe and responsible gun owner, will tell you we are about safety and responsibility, and you should criminalize the people that are using tools to harm people unnecessarily. Simple and plain. Those laws are already in place. There's already rules against murder. Let's listen a little bit more.
So many of these elected officials benefit from NRA money. If not the NRA, other gun lobbyists. Okay, the governor of Tennessee, Bill Lee, signed an executive order meant to strengthen gun restrictions, and he urged state lawmakers to consider stronger gun restrictions. But how can state lawmakers do that when they receive funding from the NRA?
He works for iHeartMedia. iHeartMedia takes billions upon billions of dollars, as most politicians do, from the pharmaceutical industry. So he's saying these things about, oh, they took some money. And when you start peeling back that onion, the amount of money that legislatures and politicians take from the NRA pales in comparison to his overlords, his bosses, the pharmaceutical industry. That's who runs the lobbying game. You guys know, you see Good Morning America brought to you by Pfizer, brought to you by Pfizer. That's the same people who funds the people that owns iHeartMedia. Legislatures cannot advocate, or are not supposed to advocate, for things that are in disalignment with the supreme laws of the land. Imagine if somebody said, we have to come up with more restrictions on free speech. The First Amendment is the supreme law of the land as it relates to governmental bodies pursuing someone for what they say. It's not supposed to happen. You wouldn't accept it as happening. The second one is the Second Amendment, the right of the people to keep and bear arms. My point in saying that is he's picking and choosing what he wants to address and what doesn't want to, as if the so-called NRA or gun lobby is paying and making all of these politicians do all of these things, ignoring the supreme law of the land and ignoring the fact that his bosses take hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions more dollars than the gun lobby, the so-called gun lobby, as it relates to politicians. Let's listen a little bit more.
Last year, data from Open Secrets, which is a research group that tracks money in U.S. politics, found that quite a few Tennessee senators receive money from the NRA. Those politicians will never vote for any type of comprehensive gun reform because they are in the pockets of an organization that advocates against gun restrictions. So, of course, their solution will be more guns. And that's how we've gotten to the point where Tennessee lawmakers have passed a bill that teachers can carry guns. That's the best they can come up with.
And even if you are a registered gun owner, you're not allowed to take your guns on.
No such thing as a registered gun owner. That's something. And Envy shoots at Anthony Calandro's Gun for Hire in New Jersey, 10-15 minutes right outside of Manhattan. So he definitely knows better if he knows anything about Anthony Calandro. He knows better. Anthony Calandro's on the board at the NRA. But this guy is saying these things and he's repeating stuff. Well, maybe he just didn't take the class. Let's listen a little more.
Grounds. It's like certain rules and regulations you have to have a guns, unless you're a police officer, unless you're of the law. Mm-hmm. Would somebody that doesn't do it for a living be precise enough to shoot somebody that's doing something bad and not hit a student by accident?
This is a fearmonger tactic. Oh, if somebody doesn't do this for a living, police officers generally do not train. They qualify. Generally, qualify means they go to a range once a year or whenever the department says they have to, and they have to put a certain amount of rounds on a piece of paper. I train more than police officers. If you're a firearms enthusiast, you probably train more than law enforcement officers. So this is ignorance mixed with fear mongering. Never mind the fact that there were school shootings down south where the police with guns stood outside and didn't do anything for a very, very long time. This is giving teachers an option, still sheltering in place, if a mass shooter comes into the room or comes into the location. This isn't Wild West where they're advocating for teachers to be walking around Wyatt Earp. Again, background check for the teachers that have the license to carry and they have to take training, and they have to take a mental health evaluation. These are all of the things that they say that they want, but right after that, they turn around and say, oh, well, will the person be precise enough? And I think they're saying what their political operatives have told them to say. These are the same type of people that were advocating for BLM, right? That said the police were horrible. And I personally agree. I think too much over-policing in communities is horrible. They don't need to be there. If there's no victim, there's no crime. If we didn't call you, we don't need you to be there. You need to be there for preventative maintenance or if we call you. So we simpatico in that. But these people were saying defund the police, this, that, everything's racist. And now they're advocating, instead of the people that want to train, that want to get the mental health evaluation, that want to carry concealed and not make the school look like a war zone or a military zone, now they're advocating for police after a few years ago they just said the police was the worst thing in the universe. Which one is it? You got to be very, very careful when people like this that I personally know, I know that they're gun owners, but they're telling you something else, that your children should not be made safe. But maybe I'm wrong. Let's keep moving forward a little bit.
Bullet not go through the wall to move off of.
Damn, I got to stop that fast, guys. A bullet not go through the wall. This is the reason why we have self-defensive rounds. Hollow point ammo that does not over-penetrate. And what are most schools made out of? Concrete. Concrete. We're not talking about 50 cal. We're not talking about surface-to-air missiles. We're talking about handguns. Most handguns are chambered in what? 9mm. And if they're taking training, which is obligated, right, by the Tennessee legislation, if they're training, then they know that they should have self-defensive rounds, which do not over-penetrate, that stop in the actual threat. My bad, y'all. It's back-to-back silly shit on their end.
Being smart and not emotion.
I don't know, but when you have lawmakers who can't come up with proper legislation to protect individuals or to even slow down gun violence, I can see where somebody would probably resort to self-preservation. I want to resort to self-preservation.
Everybody should resort to self-preservation. These teachers are actually signing up to be heroes to not only preserve their life if need be, but also for the children. We say protect the president with guns, protect the banks with guns, protect the money with guns, protect athletes with guns, but not the children with guns. That's wild to me. This is a form of deterrent, not even self-preservation. This school has armed people walking around. Don't try it. It's now a hard target, and you can't even see who the person is that's concealing. Maybe the teacher, maybe the janitor, maybe the principal. That is a major deterrent, and they're arguing against the deterrent, knowing better.
Like you said, we spend all this money sending all these millions and billions of dollars to all these other nations. Yes, we can afford. At one time, I was like, well, it's going to be too expensive. Nah, but if we could send billions of dollars overseas, we can afford to have security police officers in schools.
I would rather that. If you're not going to fund, gun violence research, then, how about fund these schools and, other institutions, fund them to be properly protected.
Right, and if you don't want, police officers in uniforms in school all day, protect them because you feel like your kids will feel awkward or uncomfortable, put undercovers.
Put undercovers in. So basically put a person with a gun. See, this is the back and forth corny shit. If you don't want a police officer there, put an undercover. An undercover, one, is a police officer. Two, what makes him capable of doing these things? Training. The same type of training that a potential teacher that goes through this process in Tennessee would have to go through. A firearm doesn't care if the person is in uniform or not. It is an inanimate object. It might be in a lockbox, in a biometric safe, in their room. Could be that too. But now they're advocating and arguing against the thing that they say that they want. So you got a person undercover. You don't know if it's a police officer. You don't know if it's the principal. You don't know who it is, that trains to defend life if need be. Literally undercover would be the teacher that trains and conceals. Let's continue.
Have somebody there.
Oh, you mean like the fire marshal on the plane, kind of?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you for that donkey today.
Oh, you mean like the fire marshals on the plane? This is the media's fault. People see things on television and think that that is like a real thing. They really think that every flight has an air marshal on it. They really, really think that. Or they know better and they're getting on this platform saying the exact opposite to just strengthen their narrative. Ironically, what they're arguing against is like the air marshal that you don't know who the air marshal is on the flight. You don't know if that teacher, janitor, principal, whoever is carrying, that is trained and is carrying concealed, that person would be operating as the air marshal if something goes crazy and they know what to do. Guys, listen, I want to wrap up because I'm just done with the silly shit. There's a reason why this shirt says media most effective devil in America. These people will get on these platforms and just say anything. They're advocating for one thing at one moment, and then going into an election year, they advocate for the exact opposite. There are already schools around America, again, mentioned Ohio and Faster Saves Lives, that have been doing this type of work, and teachers have been walking around with firearms for however long. Law enforcement officers since 2004, if I'm not mistaken, have participated in LEOSA, which is the Law Enforcement Officer Safety Act. Law enforcement officers, plain clothes or not, without a national license to carry, can carry, if as long as they're staying within the parameters and rules of each state and the requirements for LEOSA, they can carry their firearm concealed in all of the states across America. There has not been an uptick of police officer-involved shootings just because no one knew that officer didn't have a uniform and had a gun. Similarly, there are already millions of concealed carry holders that walk around that don't shoot people, and in a lot of instances are actually the person that's there to stop a threat when it happens. Regardless of if that person is law enforcement or not, most instances when there is an active shooter, that person is either taken into custody, shot, or kills themselves. If they're taken into custody, it's with people with guns. If they're shot, it's by people with guns, law enforcement or not. Do not listen to these people because they're either lying to you or they're ignorant. And, you know, they work for the media. The general public needs to be informed. The supreme law of the land, which is outside of the state, local and state so-called rules. The supreme law of the land is the Second Amendment. Any legislation that will be in opposition to that does not make our communities, our schools, our people safer. It actually makes them unsafer. So we should be in alignment with these teachers and supporting them, and they're getting the training that they need to make sure that our schools are safer without looking like war zones. But I don't know, y'all might just like Charlemagne and Envy and Jess hilarious kind of being in the back, and I'm pretty sure they're great humans and all of that, but y'all may disagree with me. Tell me what you think below, and if you do agree, make sure you do a few things. One, if you're a beginner and you want proper instruction, go over to solutionaryuniversity.org, sign up for our basic online firearms class. 20 bucks, a couple of hours, you get a packet of information right to your email. Be the solution. And also, if you want to discuss this a little bit further, join our Telegram group where we help each other in that space to direct people towards proper training, instruction, motivational, health and fitness, all of those things that make you a solutionary. My name is Maj Toure, the founder of Solutionary University. Hope to see you in class. Be safe, be solutionary.